Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and cockles presented by Bolin Media. I am Ross Bolin here with Barrett Dudley, and today we'll be discussing the series premiere of The Penguin on HBO, starring Colin Farrell. How we doing, Barrett?
Waddle, waddle, waddle.
Yeah.
Waddle, waddle, waddle.
Yeah, it's waddle season.
I'm doing all right, Ross. I just got back from New York City, where I was doing some mobster stuff.
Oh.
I got a whole gang of drugs that are gonna change the game.
Good for you, man. Making moves?
I'm making moves, you
All right.
see?
All right. I haven't come up with
That's up in New York City, Ross. New York.
I haven't come up with
New York isn't nice to guys like you and me, Ross.
God damn it. Let me talk. I have not come up with a play on words for our title yet. Because I usually... Are you gonna make it? I usually have to come up with something that's got like a C or a K, at least a C or a K sound.
Yeah.
But I was like, the closest I could get was like oysters, clams, and Carmine Falcone, but he's dead.
Oysters, clams, and carmines?
Yeah, he's dead. So I don't know what we're gonna do there yet. But today,
Oz, oysters, clams, and cobblepots?
Today we're just going with the normal intro until I can come up with something creative or one of the members of the Clam
fam will have something good for us.
Feeds
They always
me.
do. They always do. They always come, even if it's something that we're like, even if we find something, one of them suggests it too.
Yeah.
It's a creative bunch.
Yeah, we've used several suggestions in the past. So if you have something for us, hit us, at Barrett Dudley, at WR Bolin.
Some of them even
On the
probably
social
work
medias.
in New York City.
This isn't even, we're going to get to this, but this is not even technically in the state of New York. Did you know that?
Is it all New Jersey?
It's Jersey.
New Jersey.
Isn't that fucking wild? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Let's just dive into this thing,
Let's dive in.
So episode 1 is called After Hours. It was written by Lauren LaFranc, who is the creator/showrunner. And if I'm not mistaken or misreading her IMDb, this is actually her first time showrunning. She did some writing and producing for like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hemlock Grove and Chuck, but she is the showrunner for The Penguin. It was directed by Craig Zobel, who directed 7 episodes of Mayor of Easttown, if you watched that with us.
Okay, that's why I knew that. That's why I knew
he also
that.
did 3 episodes of The Leftovers, which is by and large considered to be one of the best shows ever made, and I have to concur with that sentiment. And then 1 episode of Westworld, so he's a pretty seasoned HBO guy as well.
Yep.
The show starts with Oswald Cobb basically looking out over the city 1 week after the events of The Batman. All right, so you watched the Batman movie. We covered it a couple weeks ago. If you want to go listen to our companion podcast for it, it was Barrett's first time watching it. This show picks up 1 week later after the mayor was murdered, all these other politicians were murdered, Carmine Falcone was murdered, the Riddler blew up the seawall. And as we find out, Oz here, the Penguin, sees an opportunity for himself to, take over the city, stake his claim. And since the events of the Batman, things in Gotham have gotten worse. Crime and drugs and drops in particular is the drug that we're, dealing with the most here, have taken over the streets. There's a power vacuum in Gotham's underworld. And Alberto Falcone, the son of Carmine Falcone, is taking his father's place, and I love how they said this on the news, despite his struggles with alcohol.
Yeah, he's an alcoholic / drophead.
Yeah. So the first scene we get with the Penguin, or Oz.
And this is, I just want to shout this guy out because his name is, he's dispatched relatively quickly. Sorry, spoiler alert if you're
if you're here, you're supposed to have watched, yeah.
Michael Zegan, is that right? I think that it's... Yes. And he is seared into our brains and at my house as Joel Maisel from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Oh, okay.
So he's kind of like this, it's really hard to take him seriously because of this role that is cemented him in my brain as this kind of whiny pushover, nice guy, but kind of funny, but he's kind of a chump. And sometimes,
so not a dangerous degenerate.
Not a dangerous degenerate, and he plays this role well. I thought, he kind of he comes into it. He's a good dickhead, but yeah, just like right off jump. If you're a big Maisel fan, if you're a Maisel head rather than a drop head, then this
That's where you recognize him from.
Then you're like, oh, that's Joel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first scene we get with the Penguin in action is him waddling into the late Carmine Falcone's office in the Iceberg Lounge to break into his safe, and this dude is waddling.
The step, the hitch in his step, the leg limp that he's got going on. He was not doing this in the Batman.
No, that's the thing. So, like, I immediately flagged this. I was like, I don't remember him waddling that much in the Batman because we even commented on the one scene where he does waddle in the Batman.
When he's all
and
tied
it's after
up.
Batman and Detective Gordon have tied his hands and feet, and then they leave him behind, so he's, like, waddling off because of the ropes restricting his movement.
Yeah.
So they take that a step further, and they even go in later in the episode, show us one of his feet is like disfigured. He has like I don't know if it's technically a club foot, but his foot is badly disfigured.
Yeah.
And is part of the reason for this like
Yes.
very almost over the top waddle that they hit you with in this first scene here.
Yep.
And we also see later he has like a Forrest Gump style metal brace thing on that leg/foot. Anyway, they got him waddling.
Waddle,
Waddle.
Yes.
So Oz is stealing all the jewels in a folder with like blackmail ammo in it from this safe when Alberto Falcone comes in. And Oz tries to play it off. He's like, oh, no, the jewels are totally for you. The other guys were going to come steal it. I wanted to make sure I got here first. And
Classic.
Alberto really doesn't like buy it. But Oz ends up convincing him to have a drink with him. They're getting kind of drunk. Alberto busts out the drops and starts doing some drops and tells Oz about his plan to bring in a new drug to revolutionize the game and take over the city, right? Which Oz obviously steals this plan and ends up running with it later on his own. But Oz tells Alberto a story about this gangster that ran his neighborhood when he was a kid. And this is kind of the first moment in the series where we get to see Colin Farrell's acting chops as Oswald Cobb, as the Penguin. And kind of see his motivations as a character, right? So he's talking about this gangster who was a powerful, respected mobster who, when he passed, everyone in the neighborhood threw a parade for him because he was so well respected. And he says, can you imagine to be remembered like that? And Alberto starts mocking Oz. He's like, holy shit, that's your dream. You think people are going to fucking like remember you that way? You and your ugly mug? And like the tension starts to build pretty rapidly. And then he calls Oz a little bitch. So Oz pulls out his pistol and puts 5 rounds in this dude's chest. Whoops. Like, it was a great start to the show. Like, it was a powerful start to the show. Because you think, okay, they're developing this Alberto character. Like, he's going to be a guy Oz is dealing with. But no, he's immediately murdered brutally. And, like, after a moment of reflection about what he's just done, because first Oz is, like, laughing. And then he goes, fuck! And then the Penguin title screen just pops up.
Now I'm going to guess that this scene made you think of something. I'm guessing that this scene triggered something in your mind.
What did it trigger for you?
Well, I'm not the first person to say this, although I had not read anything about the show. I had not read any reviews. And this pilot reminded me of... Now, I'm gonna say 2 shows that it reminds me of, which are gonna sound like really high praise, but just put a pin in them because I'm not comparing the show to either. Well, I am comparing it to both of these shows. I'm not saying that the quality is the same, but
well, we couldn't possibly know. It's just one episode.
It's just one episode. But yes, but this was Tony Soprano. This was Tony Soprano. This was The Sopranos.
Yeah, and that's been brought up a lot.
And I've seen that. I've seen this comparison made in nearly every review that I have kind of glanced over. I've only read one review for this show, and it obviously talks about some of the similarities. But him kind of like reminiscing on an old school gangster type, it just like immediately because Tony in the pilot episode of The Sopranos talks about whatever happened to the strong silent type, Gary Cooper, that type of thing.
Right.
And it's this same almost like monologue of like kind of like having nostalgia for a day that's gone.
For a bygone era.
For a bygone era, yeah. Things are not the same. They were better then.
Yes.
You know, I'm trying to live my life kind of in this way that I'm remembering as better.
And that I respected.
And more respectful than the current state. cut to a brutal murder, right?
Right.
Which, this was covering the Sopranos doc in between, like leading into the Penguin, turned out to be like a wonderful segue because
very coincidental
because it's going to come up a lot. I'm quite sure. But the in the documentary, the Wise Guy David Chase Sopranos documentary that we covered last week, it's on HBO as well. If you want to check it out and haven't already, we're reminded, they show us a lot of the scenes of Tony killing people basically, and like the one like that this kind of made me think of is the
kid with the soda,
the sugarless motherfucker. Yeah.
It's the last fucking thing you're ever gonna drink.
Yeah. So, but yes, immediately, like within the first like 10 minutes of the show, you're like, okay, we're doing a little bit of a Sopranos thing.
Yeah, and it's not that I disagree because they are doing a little bit of a Sopranos thing. I also think there are a couple of moments in this series pilot, if you can call it that. I don't know if it had to do a pilot or not, but the first episode, the series premiere, that are very reminiscent of scenes from The Sopranos. This is certainly one of them. I also think that the Penguin's build is very similar to Tony Soprano's. He's kind of losing his hair. Yep. He's a portly kind of dude. He wears the suits. You know what I mean? Like he's not a pretty boy. He doesn't have like a pretty boy face. So there are comparisons to be made between Oz and Tony in that regard. But all in all, I mean, fuck it. We'll just do the rest of the episode because we're going to get to the other comparisons.
We'll keep it going.
But that's a thing to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, and I only brought it up because it's the first scene that made me think of this. Yeah.
What was the other comparison? Was there another thing that you had?
I'll say it now, just so that I'm not burying the lead, but I'll save my talk about it.
Yeah, don't tease me.
The other show that this pilot reminded me of is Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Another HBO classic.
Yeah.
So, again, I thought this was a great introductory scene to Oswald Cobb. We don't get a lot of the Penguin and Oz Cobb and his personality in the Batman, like less
Correct.
than you would think probably. So I liked that this sort of, was a hot start to building his character. Mm-hmm. So when Oz leaves the Iceberg Lounge with Alberto's body, which I love the scene of him, like he's walking down the stairs with this dude over his shoulder. And even in my mind, I went, bro, just throw him down the stairs. He's dead.
Yeah,
like throw him over the railing. Like, what are you doing? He finally does that. But he catches a group of young street punks, attempting to steal the rims off of his Maserati, as it were. Maseratis are always going to remind me of Johnny Sack and later Christopher Moltisanti in The Sopranos.
This purple Maserati with gold rims.
Yeah, it's pretty over the top.
Yeah.
So one of these street punks, Victor Aguilar, as we come to know him, gets left behind by the others, and Oz like corners him, and he's like scaring the living shit out of him. When he starts to feel bad for the kid, because the kid is like, he's stuttering, he's stumbling over his words, he's clearly about to piss himself, he thinks he's gonna die. And so Oz eventually like recruits him to be his henchman. And by recruits, I mean he tells him that he doesn't have a choice or he'll be killed, and so will everyone he cares about. This kid's like, okay, shit. He basically like enslaves this dude. Like, you work for me now.
Yeah.
And when Oz examines Victor's driver's license, this is when we see that Gotham is in New Jersey. Like, Gotham is in the state of New Jersey on this kid's driver's license, which became like a big thing on the internet for people like you and I who've always thought, obviously, that Gotham is like the fictional version of New York City, right?
Okay.
So it turns out this is a direct nod to the comics.
Alrighty.
And that in Batman Shadow of the Bat Annual #1, which dropped in June of 1993.
Right, I knew that.
This was of course, we both did. Was a further establishing that Gotham City is in New Jersey when Sal E. Jordan's driver's license in the comic shows his address as 72 Fax Call Drive, Gotham City, New Jersey, 12345, although the zip code is actually in Schenectady, New York.
Okay.
All that is to say, Gotham has always been seen kind of as like a hybrid of New York City and perhaps some Chicago, but it turns out there's supposed to be some Jersey in there as well. All in all, kind of blew my mind that it's in Jersey because I thought it's New York, right? But yeah. So they're in Gotham, New Jersey. Next, Oz visits his prostitute friend played by Carmen Ejogo, Ejogo, who I remember from True Detective Season 3. She plays Mahershala Ali's wife in True Detective Season 3.
Yes.
And he asks her to be his alibi for when Alberto Falcone was murdered. It's a very quick visit. You got to assume she plays a larger character moving forward at some point. Oz and Victor, just because she's a notable actress who is very good at her job, and I would be shocked if that was her only scene. Oz and Victor take Alberto's body, and they dump it in the trunk of a car in a salvage yard. And then Oz is going to execute Victor and dump him there too, but Victor figures it out pretty quickly and talks him out of it, like saying, basically, I could be useful. I could continue to help you with your stuff. You clearly need help. I'll be a hard worker, etc. And apparently there is no real comic source material for Victor. When I first heard his name was Victor, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be Victor Zsasz, or Zsasz. There's a Batman villain named Victor, but this is not that. And basically he's supposed to be like
Christopher Moltisanti.
No, he's like Batman's Robin. Like Batman has Robin, the Penguin has this dude that they've created.
Okay.
He's a sidekick.
Yeah.
The Penguin's sidekick, Victor. Like Barrett said, Oz drives a purple Maserati, and after that scene, he puts on a purple suit that matches it.
He does, yeah.
Technically, it's plum, excuse
Plum,
me.
right. He's
not,
a penguin, he loves plum. He's purple.
Right, not purple.
Purple plum penguin.
Waddle, waddle. And he gets called in by the family.
The family.
So he goes out to this massive country estate outside the city, and he meets with these people who tell him, long story short, they're assuming control of his drug ring and moving it because there's too much heat on their current setup. We got a couple of recognizable people here. One, there's a character named Milos Grappa, who is like the assistant to the main guy in this meeting. Mm-hmm. He's played by James Madio, who I immediately recognized from Band of Brothers. I was like, oh shit, that dude's in Band of Brothers. But then as the scene went on, I was like, wait a minute, what else do I know this guy from? And keeping in mind, I have watched Band of Brothers probably a dozen times, and I never picked up on this. James Madio, his first gig was as a child actor in 1991's Hook. He's a lost boy in Hook, and he looks the exact same as he did when he was like 7 years old, bro. Minus like the facial hair and the obvious, but like in terms of like, how people age, and like I don't feel like when I look at pictures of me as a 7-year-old that I look exactly like I did then.
Yeah.
Maybe I do. I don't know. Maybe you can't do yourself that way, but this fucking guy, so recognizable. And then the other person in the scene is played by Michael Kelly. Of House of Cards. He was Doug Stamper, among other things.
Yes.
And he is Johnny Vitti. I could not get a read on what Johnny's like position was in the crime situation, because pretty quickly here, Sophia Falcone walks in, and I kind of assume Sophia is going to be in charge of the Falcone crime family, but this Johnny Vitti guy seems to be kind of calling the shots at the moment. I'm not really sure what the setup is. I'm assuming we'll get into that more in the coming episodes.
Probably so, but he definitely seems like he's at the, he's on top of the pile.
He's at the head of the table.
He's at the head of the table, so maybe he was like Carmine Falcone's right-hand man, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe he is part of the family. The family. I don't know, but he's a head honcho. He's calling shots.
Yeah. And he's got a little assistant.
Yeah.
And he's telling Oz shit that Oz, is accepting as law, right? At least for the moment. So yeah. Here at this meeting, Oz also encounters Alberto's sister. Remember, he murdered Alberto. Sophia Falcone, newly released from Arkham Asylum. We get some detail on that in a little bit, but she walks in. She's played by Kristen Milioti, whose first acting gig was as one of Johnny Sack's daughters in The Sopranos, which is also mind-boggling to me. She plays Sophia Falcone very well. She has what I would call the crazy eyes.
She does.
That you require to scare the living shit out of people.
She's excellent in this type of role, where she's like a little bit unhinged.
Yeah. Dude. Gets very unhinged at different moments in the episode, but she's suspicious of what happened to her brother Alberto, and rightfully so, right? She has sniffed out pretty quickly something is amiss here. So she takes Oz to a restaurant. She's like, well, it's been too long since we caught up, and let's go get a bite to eat. And he's like, right now? She's like, yes. They go to this restaurant. She eats and drinks like a famished psycho. She's like just fucking pounding whatever these.
That's what she is. She just got out of Arkham.
Yeah, well, but she's just so she's well dressed already. I guess she just got out.
You got to put the clothes on, and then you eat.
So she just got out. She's fucking starving.
Like a few hours ago. Yeah. I don't know.
that is like what I was like. Why is she so fucking hungry, man? Like, what is? She orders another martini before she's even had like a couple sips of her own.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Oh, she's a loose cannon.
Yeah, she's, like you said, unhinged. We find out that she was known as the Hangman. That's how they referred to her in the Gotham Gazette. And that she murdered someone. She committed some gruesome murder.
Okay.
And her, villain title is the Hangman. And she charms Oz, gets him comfortable, and then starts questioning him about her brother Alberto and his death and his plan, which it turns out, so like when the family called Oz in this last scene that we discussed, and they're telling him, we're going to shut down your drug trade, basically. He's like, I've got this idea that's going to revolutionize the game. And he's stealing Alberto's idea, right? The idea that Alberto pitched him on, which Sophia heard him do. And she's like, hey, here's the thing, guy. Me and Alberto were the only two people who knew about that plan. And I want to know how you found out about it and why you were presenting it as your own. And you think he's like dead in the water. But he does a pretty good job of playing it off. He's like, well, that's the thing, Sophia. You're the surprise here. I thought this was me and Al's thing. He starts calling him Al.
It was a good pull.
Good counter.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was like, ooh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So you think he's kind of beating her here. You're like, oh, he's pulled a fast one on her, and she's fucking crazy eyes, so she's probably going to believe it. But you still get the impression by the end of the dinner when she's like, I always saw something in you. Other people didn't, but I always knew there was more to you. You get the impression she still doesn't buy what he's selling.
Yeah, she's not
totally.
Yeah, not totally.
So yeah, all in all, another really fun scene here. They both do a very good job. You're trying to feel each other out, read each other, and this was fun. Up until this point in the episode, I'm having a great time. And before we continue, one of the ways I've been combating sleep deprivation due to the two small children occupying my home without having to drown myself in coffee and deal with a hardcore crash in the afternoon is Magic Mind. As someone who gets jittery when I drink coffee and energy drinks, I've been looking for something better to help me maintain my energy and focus throughout the day in a more effective way. That's where Magic Mind comes in, and today's episode is brought to you by Magic Mind. I've been pounding a Magic Mind right after my morning smoothie for a couple of weeks now and have found it to be incredibly helpful at keeping my energy and focus up throughout the day without the devastating crash that other substances usually bring. It comes in these little bottles, a little shot you just toss back, and I keep them in the fridge right next to my smoothie stuff and grab one every morning so I don't forget. Magic Mind is a mental performance shot, in addition to your daily routine that gets you focused, mentally clear, motivated, and productive while reducing stress with mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, plus over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D per bottle. Magic Mind contains matcha, which extends the benefits of caffeine if you're a coffee drinker by slowing your body's ability to absorb caffeine, as well as a compound called L-theanine that reduces stress. These compounds work together to prevent the spike in cortisol levels and in the inevitable crash that comes from ingesting too much caffeine. Matcha is basically nature's extended release version of caffeine. Magic Mind also donates 5 cents per each bottle sold to mental health charities that help U.S. homeless communities. They're 100% carbon neutral, and they're so confident in what they've built that they refund 100%, no questions asked, for 100 days after buying. Shipped internationally to over 65 countries. They're now in Sprouts, Central Market, and Erewhon.
Erewhon? Yeah.
Erewhon.
Oh, yeah. They got them in Erewhon.
I found
That's how you know it's good.
I'm more productive, more creative, more calm while staying energized, all without the crash that too much coffee brings. They have a limited time offer you can use now that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with code RBP at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/RBP. Support the show in your mind at the same damn time with Magic Mind. You can find the details to our Magic Mind sponsorship in the description of this episode. So after his meeting with Sophia, Oz is like, shit, I gotta bail. I'm in trouble. So he goes and gets his escape car, which is like some kind of a family vehicle, like a shitty regular car. Is the only way I know how to put it, but it's still got kind of fancy rims on it. Anyway, he takes Victor to his mother, Frances's house. And this is where another immediate Tony Soprano comparison comes in.
Yes.
Oz is a mama's boy, right? Just like Tony was with Livia. Oz gives her the diamond necklace he got from Falcone's office. And I would argue his mom is kind of like a supportive version of Livia Soprano.
Yes.
Like still psychotic, but she wants to empower her son to take over the city rather than, like have him whacked.
Have him whacked, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But she has dementia.
Very supportive of him whacking the competition.
Yeah, she really liked that he killed Alberto.
Was into that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, you did it instinctively because you wanted to. And you're like, Jesus, lady. But she's forgetting to take her meds. They're like, he's like, Mom, what the hell? Your pill container is in the tub, and the tub is full, and like your meds are all ruined. And she's like, well, the boys were taking a bath. And it took me through my second watch through to pick up on exactly what happened here.
That there's no boys.
There are no boys.
Correct.
He was one of the boys.
Right.
He and his brothers were the boys, and they're long moved out of the house. So who the fuck knows who the tub was filled up for? And she definitely needs to be on these pills. So she talks Oz into not running, and instead like staking his own claim for the city's soul. And she convinces him to do this by repeatedly calling him a little pussy boy.
Yeah, you don't want to be a pussy boy, do you, Oz?
Little pussy boy.
Do you, Oz Cobb?
Oh, little pussy boy. Got good laughs out of me there. I liked that. She said, quote, "The city is meant to be yours, sweetheart. What are you going to do to get it?" And he's like, "Fuck yeah, Mom. Let's do crime." Fun scene. Mm-hmm. But yeah, pretty direct, easy comparison to be made between him and Tony Soprano there. So while Oz is watching TV at his mom's house, he's watching this old-timey throwback black and white like performance. Maybe it wasn't black and white, I can't remember, but this chick is singing a song, Blame It on Mame. And it gets the wheels turning in his head.
Isn't she saying blame it on me?
She's saying blame it on Mame.
No.
M-A-M-E.
Blame it on Mame?
Blame it on Mame. And then Victor goes, "Who the hell's Mame?" And Oz goes, "It doesn't matter. The point is it's a scapegoat."
Okay.
And
damn, I thought for sure she was saying blame it on me.
yeah, I couldn't pick it up either. Second watch through I did with subtitles.
And I thought he was saying, who's me, as in, who's that foxy lady?
Yeah. Oh, she was foxy, you know. But the Maroney crime family is the scapegoat he comes up with in his mind here.
Yeah.
So he tasks Victor, a.k.a. Vic, with a big part of this plan, which we aren't yet privy to, but we later find out is like crashing that car into the, Falcone estate over there. So then Oz goes to visit Falcone's rival, Salvatore Maroni, in Blackgate Prison, which is like a big, that's a big deal in Batman lore, Blackgate.
Okay.
Oz tells Maroni he wants to bring the drug operation back under Maroni's control. Maroni is like, dude, why on earth would I believe you? You have repeatedly bamboozled me and my boys. Get the fuck out of my face. But then Oz gives him the ring that Carmine Falcone had taken from Maroni some time ago that Oz took off Alberto, right? It's this powerful ring. One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. So you get the feeling that Maroni has kind of changed his tune about Oz as Oz is leaving the Blackgate prison. Then on his way to wherever he was going next, Sophia Falcone and her henchmen spot Oz. A car chase ensues. He gets stuck in a situation where he can't drive any further, so he abandons his Maserati. This is another moment where I was like, that's a scene straight out of The Sopranos. When the guy comes up to his door with the gun, and then he pulls the dude into his car and is fighting with him, is like the first time Tony almost gets whacked in the show. That guy gets hit by a bus full of school children, who Oz waves at after the fact, and they end up taking him captive. Sophia has him stripped naked and tied to a chair. They're like torturing him. She explains to him that like her brother visited her every week when she was in Arkham. Like that was the one thing that kept her going. So if up to this point you're like, why does she care so much about Alberto? She seems like an unhinged murdering psychopath. Maybe she wouldn't care about anything. Well, Alberto was the only person like supporting her while she was locked up in this insane asylum. So she has one of the other kids who tried to steal Oz's car there as a witness that was all on the same night as Alberto's murder, which is making her very suspicious, right? Oz point blank says that kid is lying, and very quickly she blows that kid's head off on screen. Like it is fairly gruesome and violent, this show so far.
Yes,
like
yes,
more so than the Batman movie for sure. More HBO than the Batman movie. Mm-hmm. So they use like a wire to start like cutting into his armpit shoulder area, like which I kind of was like when it was happening, I was like, ooh, that's gonna make him even more penguiny. Because he's gonna have like a wing now.
Like a wing. They winged him.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I don't really know if that's the case, but just when shit is about to get bad, car crashes near the front of the estate. They go out to see what's up. She finds Alberto's body in the trunk, and absolutely fucking derails, screaming at the top of her lungs. The pinky is chopped off, which is when you start to put the pieces together like, oh shit, he gave Maroni the ring that was on the pinky. The pinky is chopped off, and then they point blank explain it to you.
It's payback on the
Yes.
on the under the trunk.
Yeah. People in Blackgate are going to see Maroni wearing the ring. Word's going to get around. They have no choice, the Maroni family, but to take credit for this entire situation. Oz is sort of
The game is afoot.
out from under the thumb of Falcone now. They're going to believe him or whatever. They obviously let him go. And, Victor executed the side of Oz's plan that he needed to at his request. And,
Way to go, Victor.
Great first mission for Victor on his own.
Yeah.
So Oz is released and begins plotting with Victor to take control of the Falcone crime family. And that is your series premiere of The Penguin.
That's because guys like you and me, Ross, living out here in New York City and New Jersey, they don't give it to guys like us. We gotta take it.
We got to stick together.
We gotta stick together, you and me. We gotta take it.
New Jersey. I can't even do it the way you do it, man. Fuck. All right, so initial thoughts about this thing. How'd you feel? Because we went into this, I think, really not knowing what to expect much, you know?
Yeah. So, right, like, I'm going to give you my fresh thoughts as soon as I got out of the episode, and then I'm going to give you some other thoughts as I've sort of interacted with a little bit of what's going on out there in the in the
zeitgeist?
In the zeitgeist, yes, and in the blogosphere and
Hashtag zeitgeist.
the critic sphere, all that.
Hashtag
Okay.
waddle, waddle, waddle.
For the most part, I really liked this episode. I thought the show was enjoyable. It feels like it has a lot of potential to me.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things that I said was like, well, I kind of liked that more than I liked the movie.
One of the first things that occurred to me as well.
So all in all, I think that it was a solid first showing that has a lot of potential. I think Christina Milioti is amazing as Sophia Falcone, and I really like this Colin Farrell performance. The huge leg gimp in the waddle is like a. Here's why I don't like it. This show obviously got made by people that wanted to do a mob crime noir thriller Sopranos-esque show, and the only way they could get it on the air was by packaging it up into this Batman side franchise piece of IP. This is something that we've talked about a ton, right?
That happens.
And that is well known out there, you know, especially in Hollywood, is that anybody trying to get anything made right now stands a much, 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 much greater chance if they can attach it to IP and fit it into one of these like world building universes.
Right. Now, are you saying you know for a fact that's what happened, or you're assuming that's what happened?
No, I'm assuming that's what happened.
Okay.
Or that they were, you know, that somewhere along the line, like this idea of, well, what would be your take on the Penguin was like pitched to them, and they were like, oh, well, we've always wanted to do, you know, blah 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 blah. So it's the waddle is like a reminder that this show has to live within the Batman universe. And it's because other like outside of the fact that I'm like reminded sometimes that this is Penguin, and like I hear things like Gotham or Arkham, like through the first episode, like it's not it doesn't need to be tied into that world. Do you know what I mean?
Not really.
Like this is an interesting character on his own without knowing that he's the Penguin, which is a famous Batman villain.
And when I said not really, I meant like not really, it doesn't need to be tied in. Not that I didn't understand what you were saying. They do give us like the opening shot, the first couple minutes of the show of him standing in that room, looking out at the city while we're getting like news clips and headlines and reels. They do give us the setup, like basically the Batman movie just happened. They give us the shot of like the area that Batman's in there doing the 9/11 firefighter after saving people's lives. They give us the shot of the explosions happening at the behest of the Riddler, blowing up the seawall. And there is no further mention of Batman except for in that right there, right? Which obviously is their very clear tie-in to the movie and the universe. And outside of that, I don't think there will be much. It's been said already. They're not going to be using the phrase "the Penguin." He's not going to get that nickname. People are not going to like start throwing around, ooh, the Penguin. He's just Oz.
I figured that was the case, and that and again, I felt like the waddle came into play, or the leg came into play because it's just like a you're like, oh,
we got to have something.
I know why he's called that. At least somewhere, somebody's calling him that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's why I liked it, though, because it is a little more indirect. Like you could immediately, same thing. I was like, wow, okay, so that's the reference, because, seeing him walk like that somewhere, someone has made the joke, he's the Penguin, or calls him that behind his back, right?
So I just, I hope that they're able to work, like, it's just a little weird when you know that there are limitations on what they can do and where they can build and where they can go. Because at the end of the day, this is going to have to make sense for the Batman too.
And this is my big question, for sure.
That's kind of a bummer.
But here's the thing. One season, easy to pull it off. Because they've said, no Robert Pattinson in this thing, no cameos, there's not going to be any Batman. And I'm still not sure I completely 100% believe that, but I think you convinced me it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
One season, easy job.
Yeah, that's
true. They gave us this setup in the first 5 minutes. Easy job to believe that this season is just going to be the ascension of the Penguin and the rise of the return of organized crime in Gotham City at a level that is obviously going to be concerning.
Yeah.
The question for me becomes, how do you do a season 2? How does that play in with the Batman 2, which is supposed to drop next year?
Is that even their intention?
To do multiple seasons?
Yeah.
Good question.
Right.
Don't know the answer to that. Batman 2 is not supposed to come out till 2026.
Right.
So
Got a ways.
I guess if it's just a one-season deal, the Penguin,
yeah.
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to operate under the assumption that like the Batman is off doing shit and this story is just separate from he's not concerned with these people right now. If you go beyond that, it gets real weird because it's like, how do you obviously, if the Penguin's out here making major moves, putting a new drug on the street, taking over crime families, like, wouldn't Batman's focus turn to this man at some point?
Yeah.
And then how do you weave that web? So yeah, I don't know how do you handle it longer term if that's the case.
So I mean, to your point, like if this isn't at the very least, this is an interesting experiment, and I'm glad that they're going for it and that they're doing and that they're taking this chance basically. Because it's a cool performance from Colin Farrell, right? Like he's having fun. The production value is good, all of that. Let me jump quickly to the other thing that I just kind of I noted over this first episode. I'll be interesting to see how they continue to balance tone, and if they kind of choose one way or the other. Because I felt like At various points, it kind of felt like two different shows. There's the show that is super gritty and like very clearly like in the Matthew Reeves style of filmmaking.
Dark gothic.
I'm thinking about like when he whacks Alberto, like that shit is that's gangster. That's dark.
Or when Sophia murders that kid. Yeah.
Yes. Then there's the other piece of the show where he's like, eating a hot dog and like making jokes with Victor about how he couldn't cut the dude's head off.
Yeah.
So there's like it kind of wants to be. It also seems to be like a lot that was talked about over the week is how this is a new anti-hero, right? That's another way that it kind of factors into some of these shows that we've been talking about, namely The Sopranos, but like. We're on Oz's side here.
Right.
We want to see him kind of, succeed and wreak havoc and take over and kind of win a little bit.
You're kind of rooting for him as like an underdog.
Yes. And so it was a little weird sometimes to like first we watch him kind of we can kind of get past him whacking Alberto because this dude's clearly a slapdick anyway.
Well, and he called him a little bitch.
But then we're like, it's kind of, it's really dark when he's about to whack Victor in the junkyard.
That was a dark scene.
But then
he's like, take a look at the sunset.
But then he's very easily talked out of whacking him, even though that's very clearly the case. So then we're like, okay, so we're feeling okay about Penguin. And then by the end, he's sitting there eating hot dogs and joking around with this guy.
Listening to Dolly Parton.
But yes, Penguin loves Dolly Parton. That's
9 to
another
5.
piece of this. Yeah, so that's what I'm curious to see is like, do they try to kind of have it both ways throughout the series where it's like really dark and there's like some true gang mob stuff that the Penguin gets into, but then also he's kind of this guy that we like that listens to Dolly Parton and has this little kid sidekick.
And that's where all the Sopranos comparisons come in, because that's what the Sopranos did. It was able to balance a show that was like, it was about the characters and their lives and their development and the humor, but it was also extremely dark and violent and gritty and different points, right? So if you can pull it off, I think it's a great formula that hasn't really been executed on at that level since The Sopranos. Now, obviously, I don't expect the Penguin, especially, we don't even know, like season 2 has not been confirmed. And it says in the source that I pulled up from Screen Rant, confirmation of season 2 is unlikely for some time, even after the Penguin season 1 airs and finishes up November 10th. So they're going to want focus to shift to Batman 2.
Yes, yeah,
and that production and the hype around that and the media and marketing around that. And they're not going to be able to get into a season 2 of this show until that movie's out, is my guess. And I'm also curious to know if you need to have seen The Penguin to see the Batman 2 and know where everything is at.
I don't think so. I have a really hard time imagining.
I think there's
that's
a way
gonna
to
be
have
the
both.
case. Yeah.
Without this screwing with that too much, right? You just jump into the Batman 2 and you're introduced to the new situation without needing to have seen the Penguin necessarily. But no, you brought up the scene with him eating the hot dog and talking to Victor about, he's like, we talked this through and we said it would be impactful if it was just the head, like if you sawed his head off and then put his pinky in there for maximum shock value. And Victor walks through why that didn't happen. And I loved that because it was the realistic idea of like this kid who was just some street hoodlum now being transformed into a much more hardcore criminal and not being able to just make the jump.
Right.
He wasn't just in a position to suddenly be sawing up bodies. And even as he starts to walk the Penguin through it, he's like, so I thought about how I'd have to like cut here and cut there and like this and that. And the Penguin even starts to get disturbed. He's like, oh, Jesus Christ, stop talking about the gruesomeness of the act, right? So I thought there was some realism in that because oftentimes in shows and movies, villains are just so cold-blooded. They're just able to do things that a normal human psyche would not be even able to comprehend or handle. And I like that there's like humanity in these characters, even as they are, quote unquote bad guys.
I think that's why it's going to be harder to pull off than in The Sopranos, though, because it's like, because it is based in this kind of comic book world and because of some of the decision making, like Victor is a kid, man. Like we want to he's not pitched yet as this kind of, Christopher Moltisanti is this woman beating cokehead, like
he's pretty irredeemable
dipshit, So even when we like him, we know he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
The Victor is like, we want this guy to live, man. Like he's a young kid and maybe he's being corrupted, but
he didn't have a choice here.
But we like him, and so it
was this or die.
That's and to the same, I can apply a little bit of that to Penguin as well, because we kind of like for some reason this show is like. And I think it's because it features less realism than The Sopranos, which is very much like in your current world with people that we just know are kind of gray, skewing towards the dark side. Here it's like, well, you kind of want to suspend some disbelief and kind of like root for the Penguin with like no holds barred in a way. That's I'm just looking out for where they continue that type of stuff, because it'll be a real tightrope to walk for this show.
Oh, it's a tough balance to strike. I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to strike it through one episode. It's an entirely different thing to strike it through an entire season of TV. So I'm with you. But just going off of what we've seen so far, I don't know that it could have started any better. Like I was really, really impressed when this thing was done. Like I said, I went in with pretty much zero outside influence or information. I was just like, let's fucking see what happens here. Yeah. They're trying this thing. It on paper, it sounds like a terrible idea to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to do a show that's just the Penguin between Batman and the Batman 2. It's going to be fine. Sounds like a terrible fucking risky idea. And with that in mind, I thought this was an incredible start. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well cast. I thought it was well acted. Like you said, I thought it was better than the Batman. It ended, and I was like, that entertained me and kept me locked in the whole way through.
Yep.
Unlike the 3.5 hour Batman movie, in which I was like, okay, I've had enough of Battins and his moody. What did Jon Snow used to do a lot?
Brooding. Moody brooding?
Yeah, all of his brooding. It was more engaging to me. A lot of season left to play out, obviously, but episode 1 was it, in my opinion. It was long. It's like 67 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
For the series premiere. Mm-hmm. Have you seen anything about the performance?
I have not.
In terms of numbers, let me read you a little bit here from Variety. Per HBO, the spin-off series starring Colin Farrell and Kristen Milioti opened to 5.3 million U.S. viewers across all platforms since its debut on September 19th. That includes repeat airings on HBO as well as streaming viewership. That puts it above the final season premiere of Succession, which drew 4.9 million viewers, and the second season premiere of The White Lotus, which drew 4.1 million viewers. So, good company, right?
So it's doing numbies, yeah.
Now, here's where it gets funny. It also falls just behind the premiere of True Detective Night Country, which nabbed 5.7 million viewers, so slightly above this, which just goes back to, again, to show you like the power of the True Detective brand, bro.
That's crazy. Yeah,
This is a great success for HBO, is the point. Yeah. This is not a flop. This is not a failure. This performed well and is being critically reviewed well and is a great start to something that could be good. It could be good.
Okay, it's a nice segue. Everything that I heard prior to Penguin was that it was being reviewed well. If you pull up Rotten Tomatoes, it's like 94% critics, 89% audience, something like that.
Okay.
All very, very positive. Then when you Google the Penguin review or whatever, like the first 12 that pop up, like I couldn't find a positive review on the show.
Really? That's interesting.
And so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. This is where I read one. I read one of these. And I feel like people are disgruntled more with the way that I interpreted it. And I'm reading between the lines here. The review is, I can't remember. I think I read one on Newsweek or something like that. I can't remember where it was, but it was picking a lot of nits with the show. But I was trying to read between the lines, and I think people are just disgruntled with the overall stage of quote unquote prestige TV that we're in. And we talked about this on Patreon a little bit last week about how we're looking at what we've watched so far this year, and like there's not a lot of standouts.
No, this has a shot to make the top 5.
Absolutely. And
Through
so
one episode.
I think maybe we're just in kind of a down year.
Yeah.
And people are a little bit tired of getting like this really glossy package with the big star thing, and then maybe it's attached to franchise IP and it's on one of our big networks that we're like conditioned to be like, yes, this is prestige TV.
Right.
And then it being like a B- or B+. Like we're not getting a lot of those like knock our socks off A+ original idea, like you know,
The original storytelling. Yeah.
And so I not to mention it's really hard to get a show made right now. People in Hollywood are very upset, and like if you've got a job writing or directing or on a crew, like you're one of the lucky ones right now. So I think there's just this overall sense of kind of like it's frustration with the industry, and it's a little bit of fatigue with the type of prestige TV that we've been getting for the last year, 2 years that maybe shouldn't be called prestige TV anymore.
Right.
Because it's we're kind of talking about two different things when we like look back at the shows that established prestige TV in the first place.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, the overall frustration with the industry is definitely something I identify with. I think this show is being kind of cast in a harsh light. I mean, I clicked through some of those reviews. And yes, there's one from the New York Times that says, The Penguin Review, The Dark Blight. The HBO series starring an unrecognizable Colin Farrell is further proof there is no fun in the Batman universe. That's just flat out incorrect. The Penguin Review, here's one from Forbes. Gotham gangster goodness with a delightful Colin Farrell. So that's positive. Right. Then you've got The Guardian. The Penguin Review. Colin Farrell deserves all the awards for this powerful Batman spinoff. So there's some positivity out there.
I'm seeing more positives now.
NPR says The Penguin is one of 2024's best shows. I saw remarks that it was one of the best pilots of the year, which I definitely have to agree with so far. I'll be honest.
I'm seeing more positive now that I'm re-looking at this. I can't remember. I wish I could find the one that I. Okay, it was from Time magazine, and I'll just give you the headline on it. It's The Penguin is a stylish, dumbed-down Trump allegory.
Yeah, see, that's fucking insane. I think people reach too far with some of this stuff too. Even The Sopranos. I watching this show, I was not like. I had seen all the comparisons already. I'd seen the memes and shit from people being like, Tony Soprano, Tony Soprano. So I was geared up to kind of have to make those comparisons. And then I really didn't feel the need outside of those two scenes. Like really when he meets his mom and when he is about to get whacked in a car. But outside of that, I was like, it's really just his build. It really is just the way he looks kind of that's comparable. And then obviously we're dealing with gangsters. But people are bringing in Godfather comparisons and Casino and shit. And I was just like, is this fucking necessary? Can't we just watch the silly penguin waddle around and do badass shit? Like, do we have to do all this?
Did you not get... I picked up on some of the Tony stuff. But as I mentioned when we were talking about the, just going through the plot points, like this show gave me more Boardwalk Empire than it did Sopranos.
I mean, from visually a little, yeah.
Like it's visual. Penguin is kind of like, for me, he's more of a Nucky Thompson character than he is Tony Soprano in a way.
Right.
Like he's kind of this
because Tony was an alpha.
Yes.
An alpha pure through and through. You're right.
This guy's more of like an unexpected kingpin in a way.
More of an underdog, right?
More of an underdog, more having to like really plot and scheme and kind of like weave his way through all these. Not that Tony didn't do some of that as well, but Tony started at the top of his pile. You know what I mean?
Right. And he was born into royalty, basically, mafia royalty. Yeah.
So and then yes, obviously, like the overall look of the show reminded me of some of that, and just some of the even some of the I've been having fun with the accent. Some of that even kind of like gave me like a little bit of the kind of like
Boardwalk had a lot more
gangster genre like silliness.
Yeah, Boardwalk went so far as to have a full-on character that did like the old school 1920s, like look here, see, like that, all that shit.
Yeah,
I mean, I get there's elements of it. I didn't feel like it took too much from any one of those things to make me like, I don't know. There's just so much of this shit in here. I thought it was fine.
Well, I wasn't making those comparisons in a positive or a negative way. I mean, just
drawing the comparisons.
More thinking about like what inspired the showrunners and the writers potentially, like as they were crafting this season, which they want to stand on its own. I'm positive of that. They want this to be to be good without having a tie to the Batman, while also fulfilling its duty to do that. So,
right.
Yeah.
I think the most promising thing about this show is probably Kristen Milioti and what happens with the Sophia Falcone character. She seems completely fucking insane, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what she has going on longer term. But I like the little weird evil buddy cop situation between the Penguin and this kid that he's Vic that he has brought under his wing. His penguin wing. I've got a little bit on the production of this thing I want to read real quick.
Okay.
It said development was underway by September of 2021, and HBO Max ordered it in March of 2022 after The Batman was released. The film's director, Matt Reeves, supervised the writing and was involved in hiring the creative team. So filming began in March of 2023 in New York, but was halted in June by the 2023 Hollywood labor dispute. So it'll also be interesting to see if we can tell when they broke for the strikes and when they came back, and if it all feels cohesive, because that can create issues creatively.
Yeah.
The series moved from HBO Max's successor, Max, to HBO in July of 2024, which is literally like a few months before release, man.
Yeah.
They were like, actually, sorry, guys, this is ours now.
Yeah.
Which is just so weird.
I feel like that was just changing the watermark on the bottom right of the screen.
That's it.
Though,
That's it. But you and I have talked at length about how strange this is to us, and we really don't understand the whole situation. Also, the first 3 episodes are directed by Craig Zobel, which also feels important. And we've touched on this recently, that these shows, a lot of the time what they're doing now is kind of giving you a story arc that lasts 3 episodes. These little chunks within a season that are easier for our fucking pathetic TikTok brains to absorb. And I think that's promising to me as well, that Zobel had the first 3, and to kind of see how those play out will be fun to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, we did not get a new episode this past Sunday.
Yeah, they really love doing that, giving the directors like little
chunks now.
Yes.
Work your magic and your vision and your style on these.
And sometimes that works, and sometimes it does not work.
Yeah, sometimes it can be weird, and you feel the shifts when the new director comes in, and it's like, wait a minute, why are we all of a sudden we feel so different than the first 3? Yeah, so it's just something to keep an eye on. But yeah, like I said, going into the Penguin, I really didn't know what to expect. I did not have high hopes. I thought on paper it sounded like a bad idea. This was executed about as well as it could be through one episode, and it has gotten me excited about the show, which is what we are talking about having been lacking in 2024. There aren't that many shows that going into the season, we knew, like, okay, this is going to be something special. Our number one show of the year so far, which just fucking cleaned up at the Emmys, was Shogun, which we were really flipping a coin on. Like, you didn't know going into Shogun, like, oh, this is going to be something special. So to feel this level of excitement after one episode and feel like they've got good momentum, and like I thought the word you used was perfect. Potential is what we wanted to see here.
Yeah, and we did.
And
totally.
we got that.
Yeah.
We got that. So it'll be a lot of fun covering, and I'm excited for us and the Clam fam who will be riding with us watching the Penguin. Any final thoughts, Barrett, before we get out of here?
Oh, man. I think that's it, man. Call us with some good hotline calls and takes.
Yes, if you're on Patreon.
Give us your takes, see? We want to hear them on the hotline. Call 1-800-NEW JERSEY.
Call in from New Jersey and New York. Remember, Barrett and I will be doing an ad-free episode every week in addition to our public episode where we take hotline calls from the Clam fam, specifically the Mollusk Militia, on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles, and dive deeper into each episode with digestion and discussion driven by hotline calls from listeners. Now, I will say this up front for everyone on Patreon that is already listening. Barrett's schedule is insane this week with his full-time job. And then I've got my producer leaving town Thursday afternoon at 3, so I have no idea if we're going to be able to get this thing scheduled in an appropriate time frame. I will update y'all on the Patreon page and on our social media pages, depending on how that goes. But go to patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles, and I promise for the rest of the season, if not this week, you will get an ad-free hotline call-driven episode every single week, going with every single episode. Check out the Ross Bolin podcast, my comedy show, also from Bolin Media. If you love F1, check out Formula Bone. If you're a Houston sports fan, we've got the Astros playoff run around the corner. The Texans season is kicked off. Check out Banging the Can, where I talk about Houston sports. Follow Mr. Dudley at Barrett Dudley on Instagram and Twitter to keep up with him and the other content that he gets into and creates. Go to bowlinmedia.com/shop to grab yourself some merch. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We look forward to hearing everyone's reactions on Patreon and talking with y'all in the Discord. The Cord is strong. And reading your reactions on social media as well. Until next time, waddle, 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 waddle.